Good afternoon, everyone. And I know we have the last session of the day, but I truly think that this is going to be one of the most insightful and entertaining ones as well, because we're going to hear from some of the industry veterans, especially at this Singapore FinTech Festival. And I'm most privileged and honored to be with Mrs. Ong Ai Boon, as well as who is the director of the Association of Banks Singapore, along with Sopnendu, who is the Chief FinTech Officer of MAS. So welcome, everyone, and let's begin. So,
thank you, Evangeline. Yes.
Thank you. So we're here to also talk about Mrs. Ong, and she's just written a book, and it's called It's Not Me. We'll have a copy of the book here. And in this book, Mrs. Ong actually talks about her journey as the director of the ABS for the last 40 years. And so I think I'll just open the session actually really to just ask Mrs. Ong how she ended up writing this book and what was the impetus for this book.
Thank you, Evangeline. Well, I just want to correct her. I've been there for 41 years, okay?
I stand corrected.
Yeah, okay.
41.
Evangeline. 41, yes. And I'm glad. I've been in the banking industry for 53 years. So it's been more than half a century in working in the banking industry, which is a very exciting industry. But it's an industry where I started, and it transformed me after I, frankly, came to the Lord. It's my faith, okay, that made me change, and as a result of which, I had the good fortune to work with this young man called Sopnendu Mohanty, who is MAS first FinTech officer. And we worked together, and it was in 2019 at a dinner that he and Navin both instigated me to write this book. So I was pushed to write this book.
Thank you.
And Sop, what instigated you to write, ask Mrs. Ong to write this book?
No, if I had a power of communication now, I will tell everybody to leave and come here. One of the reasons why Singapore is what Singapore in the financial center goes to this remarkable lady. She is the backbone of Singapore financial system. She has built it. This is the lady behind it. And people ask me, what is the secret of Singapore Financial Center? I say, Ai Boon. Artificial Intelligent Boon. So she has got all the right acronym to start her life. AI Boon.
Yes, AI is my middle name.
You're born for this.
So, yeah, and I think in a serious note, she has been the backbone. Many people ask, is there any way to replicate what Ai Boon has done for Singapore? There's no operating manual of Ai Boon. She's a spontaneous lady. She does things out of her heart, of faith, and whatever she believes in. So I pushed her to write a book so that we don't lose this opportunity to understand why Singapore succeeded with such remarkable contribution from this remarkable lady to show how we can build collectively a great financial center. If this book should be the reference book for every university to know how to build a financial center.
Wow. That's a high accolade coming from the Chief FinTech Officer of MAS, indeed, from Mrs. Ong. And, Sop, in your opinion, you mentioned that she really is the backbone. What do you think is that secret sauce that Mrs. Ong has that makes her what she is?
Well, I will go a little illogical here. Most of us are logical people, and we have our own limitation based on what we know. Ai Boon is deeply spiritual person. And because he's deeply spiritual, logic stops, her imagination starts. So anytime I come with some very complicated some ideas, she will not think about, is it possible or not possible? Because her logical mind doesn't work. It is a spiritual mind. She looks at the inherent goodness of that idea, and she jumps into it. And project by project has been proven, whatever she has touched, amen, God. With God's grace, we have succeeded. I think that's the secret, her spiritual, the faith, which God get her to do things what she does.
So it's a spiritual mind contributing to that. That's a key factor to Ai Boon's, Mrs. Ong's success, really, to her being one of the most inventive I think, people in this industry. Now, I know you said that both of you have worked on many projects, and because her illogical mind takes over, rather the spiritual mind takes over the logical mind, and therefore, that brings you to places that you've never been before. I understand that the Singapore FinTech Festival was one such mammoth, crazy project that both of you embarked on at some point in time.
Yes.
Back 6 years ago, maybe? I've lost count, 8 years.
Yes.
So would you like to tell us the story behind this whole Singapore FinTech Festival?
Later tell the story, but the Ai Boon is the reason why we are here today. And you please tell the story.
Well, in 2015, in 2014, Singapore was talking about becoming a smart nation. I'm just simply an analog person. I still write with paper and pen. I'm very tactile. As he described me in the book, I'm digital light, which is very gracious of him. And devices and me just somehow don't get together, And I was wondering at that time whether I could continue to work in the Association of Banks in Singapore after working there for about 35 years already, whether I could continue because digitization, smart nation, technology wasn't quite my area. And that was when, frankly, I was in church. That was my faith. And surprisingly, it was as though there was an answer to me that you may go into places of the unknown. Your feet may even not touch the floor when you're in an ocean, but I'll be there for you. And you are mine, I am yours. Now, this is my faith. And that was when I just believed. And lo and behold, walked into MAS, this young man, handsome young man that walked into MAS, called Sopnendu Mohanty. And at that time, we were just wondering, what is this chief fintech officer going to do, But anyway, he came down, was introduced to me, and we had chemistry. We had good chemistry. So he used to come down, visit. We talk, and one day he sprung an idea. Can we do a fintech
Seminar
with 1,000 people? Okay, 1,000 attendees. So I say, yeah. And then, of course, the other person is Shima, is my COO, good team, and he calls her my backbone, right?
Huh?
She is my
backbone,
okay, of the Association of Banks. And we agreed it's exciting to do something new, okay? So we said, okay, we'll work with you. And so at the right time, right place, right person, we did what we could do. He did what he could do. But he cannot do what I can do. I cannot do what he can do. So together, we worked on this first FinTech festival. And then 3 weeks later, after he curated the program, he said, can we increase it to 2,000? Can, okay? 2 weeks later, he said, can we increase it to 3,000 attendees? And then he came down and said, can we increase it to 5,000? Every time he came down, we laughed because that's Sopnendu, okay? But for us at that time, we didn't know what we were getting into. All we did is, this guy just comes down to my office. By the way, I'm a tenant of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. We are the tenant of our landlord. And so, praise God, fortuitously, it was a success. And the first Singapore FinTech Festival, on opening day, had 13,000 attendees. And then today, it is 62,000. Did you know you're going to get here?
No, never. In fact, the late Ansu Jain, who was the first, in the first edition, the closing speaker, he made a beautiful comment. He's up there. He said that this is the Woodstock moment for FinTech. People just show up, don't know what to do. And I'm sure today people still don't know what to do. They're all here. They're still figuring out what to do together. And it is Ai Boon who had that faith in me that we'll do something magical. And without her support, this thing would have never come. Never. She was just, and there are many backroom stories which we cannot share publicly. It is almost like sometimes illegal in many sense. So I'm sure we can't talk about it. But the journey was remarkable. She was quite a strong woman. She defended my ideas. She fought against the system, and she believed that we can do something good.
This is the first time I heard the regulator saying that they did something illegal. But okay, we'll just leave it as that.
She's a lawyer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's emotional illegal, nothing to law. We didn't break the law.
It's all right. Okay. we'll move on. But, I remember in your book, you mentioned that, now obviously it's professionally managed, right, by Ali Vendi, and that came out of all of those initial years. But I think in some of your war room stories, ABS was packing goodie bags for the SFF back in the day on the first time.
Yes. The numbers grew so big, but we had only 5 of us in the Association of Banks working on this project for so many thousands of attendees that in the end we had to get the staffs, children, husband, wives, and I had to call the church, come and help. So there were ushers. We just did everything on the run.
So this is the illegal part. Everybody who's not supposed to work were working in this project, including that people who go to church.
But it's amazing. I'm very amazed as what has come out of our initial...
And there are many projects. This is not the only project.
Yeah, and I know the FinTech Festival has obviously spawned many other projects and initiatives. Would you like to share the significance of how that, kind of spread? In that
The
sense?
biggest project after Singapore FinTech Festival was PayNow. Not many people know. She played a huge role in PayNow. And when we came up with this idea of putting a public infrastructure for moving money, nobody was willing to take the ownership of the scheme. I look at Ai Boon. Okay, I will take it. And she didn't understand what she was taking. Trust me, she didn't understand what she was taking. But
Agree.
And it started PayNow. Today, PayNow is the bread and butter of our financial system. And thanks to her faith and her strong belief that we can do something good together, helped us to get PayNow in Singapore. So if you're ever using PayNow, think about Ai Boon.
Actually, that's very ironic, given that she claims to be someone or rather Sop has described her as someone that's digitally light. She claims to be an analog queen. So for all that, an analog queen that she is, she's actually, in a very ironical way, co-founded the SFF along with a very, along with PayNow, which is bread and butter, like you said, to every Singaporean now. Just a show of hands, who doesn't use PayNow in this room, apart from our foreign guests, of course. There you go.
It is part of our system. And I was so happy that we went through. People did not give a chance to it. Who knew COVID will come and will become a part of our life?
Do you know who owns PayNow? Do you all know who owns PayNow? Who's the owner of PayNow? Association of Banks in Singapore. Okay? It's owned by the Association of Banks in Singapore. Okay?
So when no one wanted to step up to do PayNow, I think, the ABS led by Mrs. Ong said, I'll do it. I don't think you quite knew what you were getting yourself into, right?
No, but I must say, I'm very blessed and very fortuitous to have Sopnendu Mohanty, who is young, creative, always coming out with new ideas. And that excites me as well. And that's why I love development work. It's part of my DNA. And I get very excited when he started to work on digital sustainability data, which, again, something that I can fully understand. But I know it's good for Singapore. I know it's good for the community. I know it's good for the future. So I said, hands up, I do. Do I understand it all? No, but can do. When we can do, it's done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Once you say it can do, it will be done. And what's so wonderful is when I say can do, other people do the work, not me, That's why the book, it says, it's not me. Everybody else doing the work. And I was so excited about the digital data, sustainability data when it was launched. I spontaneously said, I'm going to work till 95. Please be around, all of you young ones.
How old are you?
Handsome lah.
How old are you?
How old are you, Mrs.
How
Ong?
old
Do you
am I
want-
now? 77, so I have only how many more years to go?
Yes.
Huh? Yep.
So it's amazing, really, that I think PayNow's really taken off. In fact, I think it's being plugged into other countries as well, right?
Yes, yes.
Sop, do you want to share a bit about what?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, PayNow became so successful that we could work with other market. Again, it's amazing how ABS is the backbone of delivering those projects. I come to Mrs. Ong and say, we're going to do a project connecting PayNow to some other country. What is that? Okay, we'll connect. And knowing her, I will do it. She gave her team. Today, we are connected to Thailand. We are connected to India. Now we're going to get connected to Malaysia. And it's truly impacting people. Today, a migrant worker from Singapore sending money back home in Thailand can send money anytime they want for a cost of $3 for every $100 transfer. It has been brought down from $20 to $3. This is remarkable. It really makes inclusion a part of our lifestyle for people from any income segment. And these projects do change all of our life. So all these projects do impact our life. PayNow, cross-border connectivity, everything has an end game. It's for the people and for the lowest segment of people. So we are really inclusive in anything we do, including this festival. When we designed Singapore FinTech Festival, I kept on asking my team, can somebody spending $1,000 spend 3 days in Singapore and experience this? We really want to make it inclusive. We want to ensure everybody has access to knowledge, everybody has access to information, people, network, investors, policymakers. Anything we do, we think about everybody. And that's the reason I get her attention. That's the only reason I get her attention. But when I tell I'm doing something good.
Yeah.
We'll talk about digitizing inclusion. I think that's one of the themes that we see also at this SFF. I think your example, Sop, about being making PayNow available to even some of the more marginalized or vulnerable groups actually really helps everyone to be part of the digital strategy for Singapore. Mrs. Ong, I was just really curious because you've always been talking about yourself as not digitally inclined. How were you able to embrace disruption and yourself be disrupted?
Well, when FinTech appeared in Singapore in 2015, we felt that we could share the lunch. So I went to there was a FinTech workshop, and as they're representing the bank, said, look, you don't have to, everybody is saying the FinTech companies will eat our lunch. I said, we can share the lunch. And that's exactly what we did. And then this young man started sand boxes, and with the sand boxes.
No lunch boxes.
No lunch boxes. Okay, sand box. They eat sand. And anyway, it developed. And again, the banks embraced it. But initially, there was a kind of a resistance. But now, I think MES has promoted the Singapore FinTech Association. And now we are working closely with them. And I am glad. I'm glad that I may not understand all of it, but I'm glad I'm working with people who understands FinTech, okay? So you don't need to know everything. You just get the project going. That's the most important. And as the Association of Banks in Singapore, our job is to facilitate. Our job is to gather the people together, the right people together, and the right people will move.
So can I do a bit of a moderator job now for a second?
Sure.
Ai Boon, there are many people in this audience who like to know the secret of Singapore Financial Center, how it was built. Just give us a 10-line story behind how Singapore became a global financial center.
Singapore had very good ministers that saw Singapore without sufficient human beings. We don't have the human manpower, physical, brawn. But you know what? We need to have brains. We need to have high value add activities. And financial center was one of the activities identified by Dr. Goh together with Dr. Van Simius in the early years. So with that, I was then working with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and I caught that vision. And for me, Singapore to be successful, the financial center is very important. And my 10 years with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, prior to my joining ABS, and the interesting thing was that I joined MAS by default. It's all in the book. I didn't want to join the Association of Banks then, in 1980s, when it was a sleepy hollow. That's why I called it. And I was the first permanent director there. It was sleepy hollow because at that time, after working the very exciting, developing the Asian dollar market and developing the offshore activities, coming to an association that was just quoting and fixing interest rate and fixing fee income and fixing commission was absolutely dull where I was concerned. But as I explained, it's in the book, okay? All these stories, by the way, the whole book is a story of my life in the financial sector. And I had my husband call me, can you please take Mr. Chua Kim, take up the job and get Mr. Chua Kim Yeow off my back? And I took on this job 41 years ago, not knowing where I was going to land myself. But I'm glad I took it. And I always say in my faith, God knows the end from the beginning. So with the Monetary Authority of Singapore's understanding of its background and with all the connectivities that I had established then, unknowingly, fortuitously, when I joined the Association of Banks in Singapore, I was able to work very closely with the Monetary Authority of Singapore as our regulator. And now I'm on the private sector and we have a very strong PPP called Public-Private Sector Partnership.
Wow. I think I just want to I think it's a perfect segue to also talk about this public-private sector partnership because I think many people, all of us, whether it's banks and in the financial industry, sometimes ABS kind of plays a very invisible hand in trying to collate responses, in trying to also bring together people at the table. Can you tell me a bit more about how you've made this private-public partnership work? And I think it's very unique for Singapore that we have this very symbiotic relationship between the regulator as well as the ABS, right? That represents the banks as well.
I think success begets success. If I can have, may I have my screen up on the TQ, the trust quotient? Yeah. Now this is a trust, the TQ. This morning we talk about the IQ, we talk about EQ. I have a TQ, a trust quotient. Now this is an equation that is very interesting that has worked for me with the Association of Banks, and I guess it must also work with others. It's called trust. The banking sector is all about trust. And the truth of the matter is, I came to the faith when my husband wanted to walk out of me because he couldn't live with his wife anymore, dominating, authoritative. From wrong, I'll argue until I'm right. Some of you understand what I'm saying. And my husband threatened to walk out, and that was when I became a Christian, embraced the faith, and from there, I was transformed from inside out. I began the walk of faith to read the word as well as I witnessed the works of obeying the word of God. And throughout, you see the TQ equation is very interesting. The numerator will be three factors, will be credibility and reliability, which will give you integrity. Okay? As a Christian, you obey the word of God. And then another factor is intimacy.
That's what I'm interested in.
The intimacy part, is not what you think it is. It is the two commandments that say, love God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And this is where you do not focus on your own interests. You focus on others' interests. And you take responsibility. You don't blame. And that's how I grew with these three factors. And the denominator is self-orientation. So my faith requires me to think of others more important than myself. And to, as I said, not to blame, but to take responsibility and to work. The work with my own a conviction. And so this whole credibility, reliability, and intimacy of good relationship. And where I am wrong, I'm prepared to say sorry. If I'm right, I don't have to tell you I told you so, but I'm vindicated, it's fine. And this whole equation builds the character in us. And my success, I'm proud to say that today, ABS is a well-known institution in the financial sector, trusted by my member banks as well as the regulator. Is because my success and my effectiveness is the result of my inner transformation, which manifested in my management of an association, as a result of which, by the time I have been transformed after 35 years, I was at the right time when a young man called Sopnendu Mohanty came into my work life, and I was ready with the trust of the industry for me to do what I can do without my counsel's approval to run the first SFF.
Oh dear.
I did not have counsel tacit approval. They did not say no, and because they did not say no, I could continue with him. And
not to discuss more detail about that, it can put us in a very difficult position.
But I mean, but it was proven right.
Yes.
Right?
Sop,
The
you
trust that we had.
Sure. Thank you. I think, Sop, you mentioned that she's got a very, she manages this very intuitive role of a deft balancing act between, managing MES as well as the banks and many different stakeholders at the table, actually. And from your perspective, could you comment on that?
Well, I think one thing my observation about Ai Boon, she's a fierce protector of banks' interest. Absolutely, it is clear to me. She will never compromise her members' interest. And she's their best ambassador when it comes to protecting their interest. That doesn't mean she has no space to change. She's also an interesting person. She can flip back and tell to her own members, there's an opportunity we should think differently in her own way. Very unique to Ai Boon. So the way I work with Ai Boon, I know Ai Boon's interest, I know banks' interest. I have this idea which will make banks a little uncomfortable to start with. I will reach out to Ai Boon and tell Ai Boon, look, this is what I want to do. It may not be comfortable for the banks. Can we find a way to work together? Ai Boon is Ai Boon. She will go around, rally people, get some support. And you would think, why a regulator who perceived as very powerful can tell banks to do what they need to do? We don't believe in that in Singapore. We believe that it should come within us to do something different. We believe in a public consultation. We believe in public collaboration. We want banks and institutions to come together for a common purpose. We don't want to force the issue. So the person who manages this both sides of the world, the broker, the honest broker, the trust broker, Ai Boon.
So, Mrs. Ong, do you want to, you've been an honest broker in many situations. Can you tell us some examples, where you felt caught between the two, and how you navigated some of those sticky situations?
Well, Singaporeans, if you know there is this organization called the Credit Counseling of Singapore. If you know that organization that helps to bring together debtors of more than 2 credit cards or loans and have difficulty to repay, there's this company called the Credit Counseling of Singapore that's able to bring the debtors to discuss with all the creditor banks and to bring them to be able to repay, because all loans should be repaid. That's a moral obligation of being a borrower. And this company will do the administrative work of collecting from debtors about $50, $100 a month, so long as they repay with a haircut of interest interest rate, a very good interest rate and a haircut. And they are not allowed to continue to take any more loans until they have repaid. Now, this was a project which I felt it should be done. But at that point in time, I felt also that the banks would not, accept it yet until it is proven correct. So I actually did it on my own, with my network, and it became successful. When it was successful, then I introduced it to the banks, and then the banks could endorse it recognize it as a collecting agent. And with that experience and several other experience of small other jobs where sometimes I just test the water, I just do it, expecting a scolding if I should overstep my line. But otherwise, if the outcome is good, then, in life when the outcome is good, whether you have got the approval or not, it is still acceptable. So that's why I was able to write on that experience, and I dared to risk that with you.
Bless.
And today, SFF is such a success.
Absolutely. It's the biggest, and everyone loves it. I hope so.
So you've seen basically the evolution of the financial industry. I think, even from the time that they first installed ATMs,
yes,
to the time that we now have PayNow, right? So that's a huge change, right, in the industry. How have you been able to kind of, how do you navigate all these changes? And what are some of your handrails for decision making?
Well, we go with the flow, I think what we need to do is the inner transformation is very important. Anyway, 53 years in the industry has allowed me to see a lot of, modifications and transformation of the financial sector itself. Today, you're talking about cyber and you're talking about scams. Some of you are too young to know that in the 80s, I was organizing training for bank staff in the bank, what to do when a robber comes in with a gun. This is history to all of you, may not even understand what this is. It is now cyber scam, but this is what I've seen, and I'm very enriched with my experience working in the financial sector for 53 years. It's one of the most interesting, dynamic, creative, imaginative industry. And
Agree.
now digital.
Absolutely. We'll make it more interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting, and I enjoy it. That's why I say I'm working to 95. Can you imagine if when I'm 95, what the banking sector will be? Please be around, okay, to share it with me.
SOP's definitely going to be around, right?
Hope you'll be around, right?
As long as I stay healthy.
Stay healthy, yes, that's right.
Right. And, just now you touched a lot about your personal transformation, right? And there was a wake-up call when your husband wanted to walk out from your marriage, right? I believe there's a bit of a personal story there. But very interestingly, I think your personal transformation, and you talk about it in the book as, going from a tigress to a kitten, right? It's truly a remarkable transformation. I think for those who may have known Mrs. Ong in the earlier days, people would have been very scared of Mrs. Ong. Maybe some still are, or PTSD as they call it. I don't know. But, I think that your own personal transformation, actually there were many direct benefits that were born out of that, right? Not just with your family, but as in your role as director of ABS. And I think that has successfully transformed the industry also to where it is today. Could you just comment on that?
Okay, I just want to also clarify that after working for 26 years with my messenger boy, who's a Malay messenger boy, he has retired, very faithful worker. And when he was about to retire, he came to me and said, Mrs. Ong, dulu macam harimau. You were like a tigress. But now you have tukar macam kucing. Now you have changed and you're like a cat. And I said, not enough. Osman, not enough. I must sepanti tukar macam anak kucing. I should be transformed until I'm a kitten. But is this kitten won't be a kitten because I tell you what, I'm not yet a kitten. So when you say that I've been transformed from a tigress to a kitten, I am not a kitten yet. I will be a kitten, but not yet. Now, kitten, if you rub them up the wrong way, the claws still come out. You know? So I am still on the way. I'm still, under construction and under transformation. And so it's true. It has transformed me to be gentler, to be more patient, to be more tolerant and a bit more self-control.
But you're still a very angry woman. Still, you get angry very quickly.
Not very quickly lah.
You shout. You shout.
See, confirm, I'm not yet a kitten, but I will be on the way.
Thank you.
This is what the book is about. The book is my transformation of a person who is very angry, who is very rejected, and how through my office situations especially, I wanted, after I came to the faith, I actually wanted to go home and be a homemaker. But as it turned out, I was asked to stay on. And in staying on is because at home, I'm queen of the house. There's no one to discipline me. But in the office, I have disciplinarians of bosses and, And as a result of which, I'm very glad that even with my staff, I have been transformed better now. And I'm glad I have staff who have said that I've seen your transformation. So I'm,
No, Ivan, I'm going to, in interest of time, if you have to give an advice to people here in countries outside Singapore, what should they do to build an ABS like you, what you've done? What should they do?
Transform themselves.
Themselves?
They have to transform a person. I think to me the internal transformation of a person is very important. Because I am glad, ABS is very successful today. And it's successful because I have been called to an area of work that is not of my own design, but wherever you are, whatever place you are in, do to the best of your ability, because you do not know who you're going to meet on the way up or on the way down.
So, Ivan, what is the first starting point to set up an ABS in, let's say, Rwanda? They've been asking me, please ask Ai Boon, we want to set up an ABS kind of institution. What should we do?
How do we replicate
How
more
did we
Ai Boons?
replicate Ai Boon?
Basically. Is there a playbook?
The very interesting
Good question.
point.
Do you have a playbook?
Yeah, with the playbook, the most important is they must have a very exciting, prescient, and forward-looking regulator.
Oh.
I tell you, ABS is not successful if there is no efficient, prescient, honest, forward-looking, creative regulator.
But we need somebody like you to push back us also, honestly, saying that, no, that's a bad idea.
Yes, and then this is where they have to understand the interests of their members and have the confidence to be able to put forth what is good for the industry, what is good for the people, what is good to develop the country, and dare to speak up nicely
Yes, agree.
to the regulator.
Respectfully.
And not to give up, to go back again, even you have to argue.
I have experienced many such things.
So, would you, if you had to boil it down to, let's say, a few points, I guess it sounds like, engendering the trust of the stakeholders is extremely important, something that I see you've done quite a lot, right? And also being able to, your own self, have the humility to be able to take comments that may not necessarily go with what you like to hear all the time.
I think in the Association of Banks so far, whenever the ABS has 40 over committees and work groups. In other words, the brains are out there. But the association has able to now successfully gather the banks together to work together for the industry. The association do not get involved in the commercial decision of banks, but the committees are the most important. They must find that the association, the work they do with the association takes effect. The work in the association impacts the industry, and this is something which the MAS has recognized, the work of the association. And therefore, you find that now we have a lot of participation in our committee. I must say that in earlier years, I had a bit of difficulty because it's extracurricular activities for bankers. But now, with success, I say success begets success. And it's the work of the committees that comes together and able to provide the feedback to the monetary authority. And that has been a great help. So I want to give thanks to all the committees, that has worked very hard with the Association of Banks.
I wanted to ask Sop actually because, you've often praised Mrs. Ong and ABS. So do you think Singapore's financial industry would have turned out very differently if there was no ABS?
Absolutely, no doubt. It would have been a friction-filled industry. A lot of friction. I think large part of our communication could have become tough. We are quite coordinated. If there's a crisis, we call Ai Boon and his team. They manage the communication. They coordinate very well. It's a well-oiled machine. I think having ABS as part of our machinery does help to make the system much more palatable, easy to work with. So it's like a symbiotic relationship. We have industry, we have association, we have regulations, and we all work together. And I can bet on this kind of friendship on a public domain between a regulator and an association is very hard to create. Very hard to create.
Wow. Did you want to say something? I wanted to just, before we kind of run out of time, just a very quick thing, because, you've also got a personal, your own family, right? How do you, at 77, you're launching Singapore FinTech Festival, you're doing PayNow, you're doing so many things, right? How do you balance that with your family? And you also have a family, your own personal family situations at home, right?
Yes, my book talks a lot about my relationship with my family members, When our relationship with our family members, with father, mother, brothers, sisters, especially husband or wife, if it's not right, you don't have the peace of mind to be able to do work. That's how I feel, And once the relationship is right at home, I find that you are able to give your best at the workplace. And to me, my family is very important. My family is very important.
Including us.
Yeah, yes. But I must say that I am very fortuitous to have faith that taught me submission. First, submission to God, submission to husband, and interestingly enough, the order of submission is God, and after that it has to be Jesus the head of man, and then man the head of woman. Now, this is something which not many people out there would accept, but I accept it as a divine order. And therefore, I've learned not to argue so hard with men, even though I'm right. And that helps. It helps. Okay? The word of God says, the woman submit to man, but man, you have to take women as a weaker vessel, and whatever you do, you have to respect the woman as well, so that your prayers will be answered. So it's a mutual respect, but nevertheless, after that, I've learned submission to authority is very important. And to be a leader, if you don't learn submission, you won't find others following you if you are a rebellious person. That is something which I've really learned. You agree?
If I'm a man, I'll agree.
So maybe just, what is one key takeaway you want your readers to have in when they read this book?
I think keep your mind open to read this book. This book that I have is really a storybook of my life with my family members, which has really troubled me a lot. But at the same time, it helped untie the knot that is within me to make me a better and better leader. Otherwise, I was you know, I know I'll say here, I said it before, my son then, from university, had interned in the Association of Banks when he went to the HR to ask for the job because the receptionist was on leave, on medical leave for 2 weeks. So when he found that out, he went to the HR and said, Auntie Sumoy, can I take this job for 2 weeks? So he says, okay. She said, okay, and took him in. Do you know, after 2 weeks working with the mother, he said, Mom, if you're not my mom, I'll call you a bitch of a boss. Oh, I know. So this was how strong it was. And he said, Mom, you never even gave me chance. I said, that is how bad it is, you know. But I'm glad that I have matured. I've been more patient. I've got more self-control. I need more, okay? I'm just saying I'm not there yet, but I know I've improved. And also by the grace of God, I have gotten a whole group of, the other success of ABS is, after working 53 years in that industry, I have many friends, not quite my age, but who kind of retired, but I don't want them to retire. So now they're all my consultants and they're all my advisors working in ABS for half the price. And that is how ABS is able to get the best of brains. And because they can do their work, I don't have to be angry as much as I used to be.
I will work for free.
You are. But I must say thank you very much, Sopnendu, for your great support. And he is not the only one. I'm very, very blessed that the Association of Banks in Singapore is a respected organization which the Monetary Authority of Singapore works very closely with. And I'm very glad and proud to say that it's not only you, the FinTech arm, but all the regulatory arm, the supervisory arm, and the other development arm do work very closely with the association, for which I am very, very grateful for the working relationship that they have with the Association of Banks. But once again, I must say, without the MAS, I don't think ABS will be half as successful as well. So all credit also to MAS, right?
Thank you.
And to you, Sopnendu, for all your creativity. Thank you very much for the working relationship. I enjoy it, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we have a very great, a very good example of such a great private-public partnership relationship here in Singapore. It's quite unique, I think, to Singapore, and it's all the more thanks to stakeholders and being led by Mrs. Ong at the ABS and SOP and many of your teams in MAS as well. This has been a very interesting insight into some of the history and the evolution of how the whole FinTech evolution in Singapore has taken on. And here we are today at Singapore FinTech Festival with AI being the main theme for this year's festival. And we have, right, the generative AI Boon here on stage.
Yes.
Actually, generative and regenerated AI Boon, right? Who has done so many different things for the industry, continuing to reinvent herself. And I just want to thank also Mrs. Sopnendu for being with us today, on stage today with this very insightful conversation. So with that, we'll conclude today's panel discussion. And for those of you who have the book or would like, Mrs. Ong to sign your copy of the book, she will be doing so on my right, at the table on my right. And thank you very much for your attendance today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.